Hey, legal besties. Welcome to Ladies in the Law. My name's Allison Melendez.
And I'm Michaela Dixon.
And today we have the incredible, if you could please introduce yourself.
Absolutely. Danielle Miller, the owner of Miller Personal Injury Attorneys based out of Las Vegas.
Yay! So we're so excited to have you, Danielle. Thank you so much for flying out to be with us today. So just as a recap, for season 2, we're going to be talking about how to continue to lean into your authentic self, lean into your softness and those traits that make you uniquely you, and also just expanding on our experiences as female attorneys in a heavily male-dominated field. So for today's discussion, you have a really interesting background. So you have your own firm, but you actually started on defense.
I did defense work. So I've been an attorney for 20 years now.
Okay.
So the first couple years that I started in my practice, it was insurance defense because, I didn't know what I was doing. I just got out of law school and I needed a job. So I did that for a couple years. And then I transitioned to business litigation. And I did that for, I think, 4 or 5 years. Then I went back to insurance defense for quite some time. So, yeah. And then eventually realized the error of my ways and said, you know what, this is not what I want to do at all. I felt so yucky and slimy. And then 5-6 years ago is when I transitioned to personal injury.
So exciting.
I know. I want to back up just a real quick. Did you always know you wanted to be an attorney? Was your journey like a linear one, a kind of roller coaster-y type? Like, how did that look for you?
So the journey, that was not the plan necessarily to be a lawyer. When I was in the 3rd grade, my teacher was like, you should be a lawyer.
I was also a child that was told that.
Yes. And I'm like, okay, I'm in 3rd grade. What do I know? And then I heard it again, like when I was in the 8th grade. And then I heard it again from my first boss at my first job. So I originally I wanted to be a forensic psychologist.
Oh.
And yeah, right?
Really cool.
How exciting.
That is so interesting.
And so when I was in college, I was working on my degree in psychology. And you need a dual degree, a PhD in psychology and a law degree. And the University of Nebraska has the best dual degree program for that in the country, right? So random, Nebraska.
I know. I didn't even know that you had to have your JD also.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Oh.
So I applied to the program. Mm-hmm. I applied to the PhD program and the law program. I did not get into the PhD program, but I got into law school. So I was like, you know what? This is definitely a sign.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the rest is history.
Did you fall into insurance defense?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because, when I don't know, but I can't speak for everybody else, but when I was in law school, you really don't even know what being an attorney is like. I'm thinking it's like, suits, like, I'm just going to be pretty and go to court,
Objection.
Right, exactly. You have no idea. So I didn't know, and I clerked for the Nebraska Attorney General's office in law school, but I knew I didn't necessarily want to be, a government employee or a government attorney. So yeah, it was like, hey, I just passed the bar. I need a job. Yeah. And there's no offense to insurance defense firms, but they're pretty much always hiring.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was very
You see a lot
easy.
of job postings.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. So yeah, that was that.
And so you start working at an insurance defense firm, and you ended up going back to insurance defense at a certain point. Do you feel like getting those skills, though, from the defense perspective has helped you now?
Immensely.
Yeah.
Immensely. And, it's funny. I had a young gal reach out to me, and she's in paralegal school. And, she was like, what do I do? How do I do this? I'm going to sit for the bar and, go to law school, whatever. And I said, I would suggest starting at an insurance defense firm first.
Yeah.
That is definitely a recommendation that I make because, granted, minus the billing, which is, oh my gosh, it's torture.
PTSD.
I know, right? Yeah. It's so triggered. I'm so sorry. You really, and at least all the insurance defense firms I worked at, you can do whatever. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. You learn how to work up a case from start to finish. There's no concern about, you necessarily messing anything up. It was free reign.
Yeah.
So to build those skills, because you have to know how to work a case up from start to finish. Absolutely.
Did you get thrown to the wolves?
Oh, absolutely.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
That's like a rite of passage.
My first doctor's depot, I think I had been practicing for a year. And it was a neurologist.
Oh, dear.
It was a neurologist. And I'm thinking my boss, like, really? And he's like, oh, you got this. I'm like,
This
no,
isn't even in
you
English.
trust me? I don't got this. Yeah, it's a whole new language.
Yeah.
And then my second one was a biomechanical engineer. And I'm like, really? I mean, literally thrown.
Like maybe
to the-
let's start off with like a witness depo and then like ease my way into the expert.
Yes.
Well, so Allison was also worked on the defense, and so I have learned so much from her because I am like I've only ever worked at the law firm that I'm currently at, and so this is like my experience, and so like I learn a lot from what she's done, which is very helpful for me, and I appreciate you very much. But she tells me so much about the other side and how like what the adjusters need, and like okay, her mediation brief thing that she taught me, where essentially like you have to send it 2 weeks to the mediator, but defense has to send it. Oh God, I'm gonna butcher it. At least like
30, 60 days, depending on the client. So I would always tell people like now that I'm on plaintiff side, it's like get that out like ASAP. Don't wait for your deadline because then they're not going to take into consideration all this other stuff.
Right.
So.
Absolutely. Were you thrown into the wolves as well?
Oh gosh, I think my first week it was like 3 depots every day.
Oh yeah, that too. I mean, they will boggle you down with so much work. It is impossible, to stay on top of.
But I will say I think it is a good tip for someone that wants the experience because I feel very comfortable taking depositions now. Like I don't get the nerves because I was
sensitized.
I was just so used to
so used to it.
And sometimes just covering files that you might not be 100%, like you might know the gist, but not like fully understand the case file. And so now being on this side, it's like, I know my client and I just feel like so much more prepared. So the confidence level is so much higher.
Absolutely. And with defense work, you do have to dig. I mean, you have to read everything and look at everything because you have to do the status report.
Yep. Oh, the dreaded status report.
So, it shapes you on how you approach your own case on the PI side for sure.
So did you switch to plaintiffs while working for someone, or was your shift when you opened your own law firm?
It was before. It was, so my law firm will have been open a year this April.
That's exciting.
Know, right?
Wow.
Congratulations.
Ooh, April.
It's
Love
crazy.
it.
I'm like,
Wow.
what, is this really happening?
My year anniversary?
So I had been doing PI, personal injuries, 6 years before that.
Okay.
So I worked at 2 different firms, and then I was like, you know what, I can do this. Yeah. So opened up shop.
And you also do sex assault cases?
I do. Yes. Yep.
That's awesome.
Yeah, those are tough. Those are very, very tough, especially, I mean, I can only speak to Vegas, obviously, but it's definitely a problem in Vegas, between sex assault, sex trafficking, and then, it's bad. So it's hard, but then it's satisfying too, knowing that you're listening to your clients and helping them through a very, very traumatic experience.
Absolutely.
You're allowing them like the space to take control of what happened to them and find their voice through it. And
Definitely.
I think there's so much power in that.
Oh,
and also heaviness.
It's been therapeutic. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you at the end, your clients are like, "Oh my gosh, you helped me so much." This, believe it or not, it really, really helped me.
Yeah. Wow.
I
I love
know.
that you do that
Me
work. I just
too.
think that's so important because I think it's so important to just like, while we are not defined by what we do, it's also a big chunk of what we do every day.
Absolutely.
And so you want to feel in alignment, like with what actions you're taking and the words that you're speaking. And it feels like you are in alignment, which is really awesome.
It's nice. But when you do defense work, though, you're not in alignment.
Was that shift hard for you? Like, when did you know it was time to do it?
It was, I mean, I shouldn't say I was plotting my escape for years, but I kind of was. I knew pretty early on, that when I did insurance defense, I did do a lot of first party bad faith, which I did love.
Yeah.
I did enjoy that part because it's, it just seemed much more straightforward than necessarily having to do, the third party stuff. But I would say definitely probably 4 or 5 years before I made the decision to leave and go to PI, I should say I always knew I wanted to do that. Really.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
I think sometimes taking the leap is the hardest part.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You said that perfectly.
What was that like triggering moment? Was there a triggering moment or was it just kind of like, I'm done, I'm just going to go for it?
It was all the triggering moments.
Like, which one?
Exactly. It was just getting tired of it. When you do defense work, the worst is, the adjuster just being like, oh, we're not going to pay. And I'm like, but the person is injured. Like the logic with insurance companies sometimes was, they're treating just to get rich. Nobody wants to go to their doctor's appointments as a full-time job to get 10 or, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
A certain amount of money. I mean, they're clearly injured. And that was such a hard thing for me to reconcile. Pay them, they're injured. what's the problem? Like what, and then all the excuses that they use.
Yeah.
It never made sense to me, and it still doesn't.
And sometimes too, just even if you're doing a full analysis and you're working up the case and you're making the recommendation for like, hey, let's pay this out. Like, this is not a case we want to try. Absolutely. This is a red flag case. Like, this plaintiff is amazing. Just not having them listen to you, I think, was, for me at least, like the most frustrating part. I was like, well, then why am I doing
this? Exactly.
Like, I'm literally advocating for this client.
Yeah, that was hard. And that was constant. Yeah. As you know, it was an all the time thing. And I'm like, this is dumb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you like have a plan to like transition, or were you just like, I'm just going to open up shop and here I go?
Well, so this is kind of not the best. This is not the best thing to say. When I was doing defense work, I was networking with PI attorneys. You know what I'm saying?
Oh,
like
yeah.
I was, you know, a lot of the doctors already knew me. I already had relationships with a lot of the providers already, you know, so I was kind of laying that groundwork the whole time I was doing defense work, because I knew that's what I wanted to do. Genius. And then one of the attorneys in Vegas, she had, I'm sure you guys have heard, well, anyways, she had, I don't want to start talking about all the attorneys in Vegas, but she decided, you know, had her own PI firm, and she didn't have a litigation department. And she was farming out all of her litigation. So she's like, hey, do you want to be my litigation department? And I've only litigated, so I'm like, sure, it makes sense. So that was the first initial step, doing PI, is being her litigation department.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I want to kind of ask you about networking.
Oh,
because I feel like sometimes like networking can be so difficult to do it authentically. And I think everyone thinks that their method is the right method, you know, where it's like, oh, you just have to go hand out your business cards. You just have to do this. And it's like, well, that just doesn't feel authentic. Like, I want to meet someone and get to know them. And for you, like, it seems like your networking was really fruitful. Like, do you have any tips on like what you did, what worked for you, what felt right to you?
It definitely wasn't the going out and handing out my business cards. That I just didn't. It was more so, I mean, I was fortunate because a lot of people that I had met doing defense work as friends, they just so happened to work for, you know, or be in the med legal community. And I just so happened to be friends with them. So that's anytime they were like, oh, we're going to lunch, I'd tag along. So, you know, I was lucky in that sense, but it was going to a lot of law firms, personal injury law firms would have open houses, or a lot of doctors would have open houses. And I would just go to the open house and I'd be like, hey, you know, I understand I'm doing, you know, I'm a defense attorney, but I'm here, you know, just my plan. And I would tell them my plan is, you know, at some point to do personal injury, which they totally respected. Yeah. And they made it clear, once you're ready, let us know if you need anything. That's awesome. So yeah, it was a lot of that, definitely.
Did you, I guess, have like someone that was helping guide you on like, how do you start your own law firm? Like, no. Okay. So you just went for it. I love it.
I said, okay, I got to do this. Like it's either now or never. And I pretty much Googled how to start a law firm. Yeah. And
Google is usually my first stop too.
Yes, it's amazing what you can find on Google. And there's actually a lot of resources, checklists, and I mean, they all kind of said the same thing. But, you know, little things that you would never think of, you know, each one kind of said, oh, well, don't forget about this. Don't forget about that. And then I did my business plan. And once I had my business plan done, I was like, okay, I can definitely do this. Yeah. But you don't, you know, no matter what firm you guys have worked at, you still don't know what's going on so much behind the scenes.
Yep.
Yeah. Like at all.
All the operations.
Operations. Like little things I never thought about, like, you know, having your name in a Martindale directory or something. Exactly. I don't even know who's Martindale. You know what I'm saying? Like, just in having those directories, like my firm had done it for me, and then I realized I'm gonna have to do these things. You have no idea.
And you don't know until you don't know.
Exactly. And then just there's so many options too, like for software. You know, what kind of software do I want to use? So I'm having to meet with all these different software companies to find out which one I like best. I mean, so many little things that
you're like, when does the lawyering come in?
Exactly. I was like, am I going to get this, you know, party started? Because I'm doing too much other stuff, you know, administrative. But having my business plan, I know it sounds silly because that sounds like an outdated thing to do, is have a business plan.
I love it.
I have a plan for everything. I'm like,
type A to the extreme.
I'm definitely type A too, but when I tell people that, they're like, really? But you need it because it would change. You know what I'm saying? Like I would meet with one vendor and I'd be like, oh yeah, they're off the list. I want to use this instead. It was just constantly being updated, and that was important to keep me on track for sure.
Wow. That's it. I think one of the things that you talked about before we hopped on was the difference between what you learn in law school and even outside of just practicing. Like there's just so much that you don't know and that isn't really talked about. And I think opening up your own business, like that's a huge topic. Like I think that should be taught in law school. I think a lot of people end up going down that route. So I'm curious if there's any like other things that you felt like the law school didn't teach you and that you would have loved to see.
I feel like everything.
I know. How to actually be an attorney.
How to actually be an attorney. Law school does not. Do they know that? I mean,
right.
How to e-file.
Yeah, they don't teach you anything. I shouldn't say. I mean, law school obviously has its purpose.
Critical thinking and how to read and get what you need from the reading.
Right.
But there's more than that.
There's so much
like
more
the
than
application.
That. The application, the practicality, what your day is going to look like from start to finish. And I don't know about when you guys went to law school, we had like a civil clinic. But even then, it's just a little dabble. Like you're handling your own cases, but you're still just not getting a flavor for it. And I wish they would change the model in that sense of really the business part is huge. Because I feel like with being an attorney, you have to do it. Definitely, there's a component of that in there. Yeah. But the business part, you don't have to do that. That can be taught. You know what I'm saying? Using just simple instruction. And I wish they would focus on that more.
I think it would make it seem like it's more attainable.
Definitely.
Because I think there's so much fear in the unknown. And especially when it's a whole new terrain where you really have to bet on yourself. And so even if like you're struggling on confidence within yourself and your own knowledge, which I'm sure all of us do to a certain point, like imposter syndrome is real.
Legit.
Like, do I know enough? Do I have enough resources? Can I do this? If you're already having those thoughts and then also thinking, what don't I know? Like, when am I going to be confronted? What can't I plan for? Can feel debilitating if you have no kind of like place to go for this information or a baseline.
Absolutely. Even the basics, even just something as simple as, having a business plan. You know what I mean? Just something simple, checklist, things to think about.
How to do a business plan. Like some people haven't done that. And,
exactly.
Especially if you're going, traditional, like right out of college, straight into law school, like you're still very young and you probably haven't had a lot of work experience. So
not at all.
You might not know what a business plan is. So I'm curious though, did you, to what extent did you feel like, did you start questioning yourself? Like, do I have enough knowledge? Like, I've been doing this for a couple years, but like, is now the right time? Because what I've come to sort of just speaking with other female attorneys, it's like this theme of, they wait 10 years, they wait significant periods of time until they have enough information. And then they're like, I could have done this 5 years ago. Once they actually jump in, I'm curious if you had that experience.
I should have definitely opened up my own law firm 10 years ago, without a doubt. But I mean, obviously it didn't happen. And I feel like the timing was right because there were aspects. So before I started my own law firm, I worked for one of the best personal injury trial law firms in the nation. And they taught me things that after all those years of practicing, just very strategic things, because they took cases that it's like, they're the worst cases. They're on their, they would be referred to our firm because there was like essentially no help for them. Yeah. The lost cause case, saving. And that firm did that, and they were excellent at that. So learning that skill was very helpful, and it did give some confidence as well. I would say so for sure.
I think it's a combination of like, do I know enough? The fear of the unknown. And if you've only done a specific portion, like we also just do litigation. Yep. So like for me personally, the pre-litigation side is kind of like the unknown. Like I don't feel like I have that much confidence in that portion. I can litigate. Right. But was there anything that you felt like when you did open up shop, there were things that you were like, oh my gosh, I have no idea what to do. Who can I call?
Well, fortunately, so it worked out. So at the first firm I went to after doing defense work, Since I was the litigation department, I was one person. I had to work very closely with the pre-lit and the claim side.
Okay.
So the whole time I'm thinking, I'm packing away this knowledge for when I open up my own firm.
Smart.
Because you do need that. And had I not have had that, I definitely would have felt more concerned, more worrisome. But yeah, why we wait? Because it's funny. Like I know guys that I went to law school with. They as soon as they got out, they started.
Yes.
Could you imagine?
Yes.
Freaking not. Like
no. Never.
Zero experience and just open up shop.
And they're fine.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it blows my mind because I think a lot of in my experience, a lot of the females that I've spoken with that have their own firms do kind of hesitate. Yeah. And I think it's so empowering. And maybe it would be like if there were options within law school to kind of like dabble in business ownership and like take an elective instead of having to take property. But I do think that there is still like this lack of confidence.
It is, absolutely.
So
even when I did it, I'm like, am I really... I was second guessing myself, absolutely. But then it was too late at that point.
Like I already have it here. It's like you have to gaslight yourself into believing you're confident,
I can do this. One thing that we did want to talk about was, so in your experience in Nevada, so there's already this first layer of just being a female attorney. There's not that many female attorneys. It's a very unique experience. And then you add other levels of your identity to that. Can you kind of talk about how that has been in terms of your experience?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it was, I will have to say, definitely held to a different standard and different expectations. Absolutely. I know when I was doing insurance defense, there was another attorney there, white male, and he got away with murder. I mean, it was one point, he made attorneys cry. Oh my goodness. He was mean. He used slurs,
That's crazy.
It was, and management knew, the partners knew. And I remember, and he ran amok. And I remember I got in trouble, and this was so silly. Somebody had sent out, like the office administrator had sent out an email to everybody, something about like, Monday's a holiday or something. And I accidentally hit reply all and said like, yay. And
how dare you?
Yeah, I was like, wait, what? You got in trouble for that?
I got in trouble. And he and I had the same boss, and I got in trouble for that. I got called into his office. Next time, don't hit reply all. I'm like, really? But the guy 2 doors down from your office literally just made the junior associate, next to him cry. Jeez. But I'm in trouble for his being like, hey, I'm happy for the 3-day weekend. Yeah, it was a lot of things like that.
My heart stopped because I thought you were going to say you accidentally were like talking about someone and hit reply all.
No, I
wasn't. Yay?
Just, like, wait, just a little too enthusiastic for their like.
No, don't be happy,
And I think that's something that we talk about a lot is like, sometimes you feel like you have to like almost like not be yourself and like just conform and like don't be too nice, don't be too like good morning, hi. And it's so hard because like that's genuinely who you are sometimes, and you have to kind of like dampen yourself.
Oh, you can't be yourself. You really can't. And if you can find a place where you feel comfortable, where there's not that dynamic, that's a great thing. But I mean, obviously I had great relationships with some of my coworkers. So like in private, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
In my office.
Not in reply all.
Yeah. In my office we could joke and laugh, but apparently, a reply all email was too much. But yeah, it was just hard, and just, things that would happen. There was one situation, and this was really bad, and there was a judge who actually stuck up for me because she didn't like the way that it was handled.
Oh, wow.
It was a mediation, and it was with a rideshare company, and I go to the mediation. The judge is a mediator. She's a retired judge. She was the mediator, and I'd been asking for settlement authority because at the time I was representing the rideshare company. I had been begging them, I need settlement authority. And he was just, screwing around, and he would not give it to me. He would not give it to me at all. And then at the time of the mediation, I'm there with the judge, the mediator, and I'm like, hey, I don't have authority. And she's like, you need to get him on the phone. You need to get this guy on the phone. I get him on the phone in front of her, and he gets so upset, pissed off. And I'm like, you agreed for us to do this mediation. She is telling you she needs to talk to you. Anyways, so we hang up. The guy from the rideshare company, I guess he was like their corporate attorney or something, handling that department, went off on me.
Oh my gosh.
But then what's worse, he called and left a message with my boss. Stop. I get in trouble with my boss about this.
For doing your job?
For doing my job, mind you. And thank goodness that judge, she's a woman who was there and was the mediator. She called my boss back. And she told him, she goes, it was unacceptable. Danielle did the right thing. She did what I told her to. But the fact that my boss did not have my back.
And the judge
did. Yeah. And it was like, I've worked for you for how many years? How dare you not have my back? And instead took this strange man who isn't even part of this firm. And I'm sure it was, we don't want to ruin the business relationship, but right is right and wrong is wrong. And I'm your employee, but it was a lot of little things like that. Yeah. So, and I've been fortunate. I was lucky that she stood up for me and called my boss and said that was, what he did was wrong.
Wow.
Yeah.
Especially like you agreed to the meeting.
You agreed. That's what was
infuriating.
Like, is it wild that you would need settlement authority? No.
Not
like
at
that
all.
is pretty
And I
standard.
felt like this guy was playing a game, and he actually ended up getting fired.
Oh wow.
Yeah, he got fired because there were the rideshare companies based in San Francisco, and there were two other female attorneys that were like in-house counsel, and they heard about what happened, and they sent me flowers.
Good.
And they made sure I don't know if they made sure he got fired, but something obviously happened.
Held accountable.
Yeah, exactly. So it was like, okay,
it's like just an example of like all the women around you.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was
getting
exactly. And that's what made it so important to me. And I do want us to do better in that sense. Supporting one another for sure.
I think that's almost like our profession too. A lot is like we're advocating for others, you know, and I find it so much easier for me to advocate for people than myself.
I know.
And I think sometimes that's so hard because like who knows, like those two women at that office might have been experiencing that from them too. And then they hear that it's happening outside, and it's like that's almost like that like kick in the butt where it's like advocate for them. Like this is going to continue. It's not just you. It's going to impact other people. I think there's so much power in that. And
it is true. I notice myself this, very much the same way. Like I have no problem advocating for others, but when it comes to me, I'm like, I don't know.
Like, I don't know. Did I read into that a little bit too much?
Have you, on the flip side though, I'm curious. So obviously like we promote women empowerment and women uplifting other women because there's plenty of room at the table. Have you personally experienced like women tearing you down?
Oh, absolutely. And I feel like that's worse.
Oh, 100%.
And more frequent.
We should be on the same team.
We should be on the same team.
Yeah. Like it's already hard enough. It's already we don't need to add another layer.
And that's what makes and I'll never understand where that comes from because I always feel like you can lift yourself up without tearing other people down. And I know I felt like when I first started practicing, it was more common, and I feel like these, the younger generations are getting more away from that, and I hope so.
I do too. I think there were like horror stories I would hear from like people that would be like, well, I got thrown to the wolves, so like you need to just
rite of passage.
like you got to go through this. Like I had to come back from maternity leave at 6 weeks, and it's like we can do better, guys. But it's really nice. I'm curious though, like when you were on defense, how was your relationship with female attorneys on the plaintiff side? Like, were you friendly?
Oh, you know what? They were the best.
Oh, okay.
I mean, they were very much. That's what was crazy. Like, it was more PI attorneys telling me to go out on my own. The support that I got was crazy. Then when I finally did it, they're like, "Oh, welcome to the club." Telling you
we're so happy to have you.
Finally,
I know.
Definitely. The PI female attorneys on the other side, great. I had great relationships with all of them. I actually had when I did defense work, I had great relationships with pretty much all the PI attorneys, male or female.
Those are my favorite kinds of defense attorneys to work with, truly.
No, you have the same goal. Like, let's close this case. I have way too many on my desk. Like, let's just wrap it up. Yeah, and I think we always talk about that. Like, I have some pretty close defense friends. And for me, it's just like, we can get so much done. Like I'm going to see you again on another file. Like maybe this one doesn't settle for that much, but the next one will. So you just never know.
Definitely. And it's funny because I do think you can have, anytime I've experienced, any type of tearing down from women, it's been in my own, at the firm that I was at. But outside of that, when it came to working on cases, never. Like I felt like I had good working relationships with a lot of the female attorneys I worked with. Not all of them.
Yeah.
Of course not.
Yeah. There are varying degrees for sure.
Exactly, yeah. But I felt like overall, there were a few I was like, oh gosh, I don't want to have to deal with her on that.
Well, I loved hearing about the impact that having worked on defense has had on you. Because I personally also had, it was rough, but I think I learned a lot as well. And just hearing about your journey to opening up your own law firm, it's incredible. It's very inspiring.
Thank you.
I love it. And I think other people are going to really love hearing about that process and how it happened. And for the next episode, we'd love to go more in depth on some of the things that you like to do outside of the law. And so please stay tuned for excuse me. Please stay tuned for episode 2 of the series. And don't forget to catch us up whenever you get your podcast. Thank you.